The gunshot echoed through the twilight air as Katherine Winters ran for her life, her heart pounding against her ribs like a caged animal desperate for escape. Her once pristine blue dress was torn at the hem, mud splattered across the fabric as she fled blindly through the unfamiliar terrain of Wyoming territory. The year was 1878, and she had never felt more alone or terrified in her 22 years of life. Another shot rang out, closer this time. Katherine ducked instinctively, stumbling as her boot caught on an exposed root. She righted herself quickly, her breath coming in panicked gasps as she spotted the dense cornfield ahead. Without hesitation, she plunged into the tall stalks, their dry leaves scratching at her face and arms as she pushed deeper into their protective embrace. The rustling of the corn seemed deafening to her ears as she moved forward, hoping the approaching darkness would conceal her path. Her pursuer's voice carried on the evening breeze, threatening and filled with malice. Katherine pressed a hand to her mouth to quiet her breathing, crouching low among the tall stalks. "You can't hide forever, Katherine. That money belongs to me, and I aim to collect it one way or another." Tears stung her eyes as she crawled forward, the hard earth bruising her knees through the thin fabric of her dress. She hadn't stolen anything. The money was rightfully hers, left by her father before his death 3 months prior. But her stepbrother Jacob had other ideas, convinced their father had cheated him out of his rightful inheritance. Katherine froze as she heard hoofbeats approaching from the opposite direction, not from the road where Jacob would be searching, but from deeper within the property. Someone else was coming. Her heart sank. She was trapped between two unknowns with nowhere left to run. As the hoofbeats grew louder, she made herself as small as possible, pressing her body into the soil beneath the corn. The horse came to a stop not 20 feet from her hiding place, and she heard the creak of leather as its rider dismounted. "I know you're out here," a deep voice called, not Jacob's voice, but a stranger's. It held no malice, just quiet confidence. "I saw someone running into my field." "You're trespassing on private property." Katherine remained silent, weighing her options. Behind her lay Jacob and certain danger. Ahead was this unknown man who might help her or might simply hand her over to Jacob if he came searching. The stranger sighed audibly. "Look, I don't mean you any harm, but there's a storm brewing and it's not safe out here. My house is just beyond the field." A raindrop hit Katherine's cheek, followed by another. The stranger was right, the air had grown heavy with the promise of rain. She heard footsteps coming closer, the corn stalks parting. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the rustling leaves. "Please help me." The footsteps stopped, then deliberately moved toward her voice. A moment later, the corn parted to reveal a tall man in a worn leather vest and denim trousers. His face was partially shadowed by his wide-brimmed hat, but she could see he was young, perhaps 30, with a strong jaw dusted with stubble. "Well now," he said softly, crouching down to her level. "What do we have here?" In the fading light, he took in her disheveled appearance, the fear in her eyes, and the way she clutched at her small traveling bag. His expression softened. "Someone's after you," he stated rather than asked. Katherine nodded, unable to find her voice. "Can you walk?" He asked, another nod. "Good. My name's Adam Mitchell. This is my farm, and you're welcome to shelter here tonight." He extended a calloused hand toward her. "Come on, let's get you to safety before this storm breaks." Katherine hesitated, then placed her trembling hand in his. As he helped her to her feet, a shout echoed from the edge of the cornfield. "Katherine, I know you're in there." Adam's expression hardened as he glanced toward the voice. "That him, my stepbrother," she whispered. "He wants my inheritance. He tried to kill me." Without another word, Adam led her in a crouch through the corn, moving away from Jacob's voice. They reached his horse, a magnificent chestnut stallion, and Adam helped her mount before swinging up behind her. "Hold tight," he murmured, his breath warm against her ear as he urged the horse forward. They emerged from the cornfield on the opposite side from where Jacob's voice had come, riding toward a modest 2-story farmhouse set back from the fields. Rain began to fall in earnest, quickly soaking through Katherine's thin dress and sending shivers down her spine. Adam guided the horse to a small stable attached to the main house and dismounted quickly, reaching up to help Katherine down. Her legs nearly buckled as her feet touched the ground, the events of the day catching up with her all at once. "Easy now," Adam said, his strong arms steadying her. You're safe here. Inside the stable, he quickly tended to his horse, then led Catherine to the house. It was simple but well-maintained, with a large stone fireplace dominating the main room. Adam immediately set about building up the fire while Catherine stood dripping on the wooden floor, clutching her small bag to her chest. "There are some clothes in the trunk upstairs," he said, not looking up from his task. "My sister left them when she moved to California last year. They might be a bit large, but they'll be dry. First door on the right." Catherine hesitated. "Why are you helping me? You don't know me." Adam looked up then, his blue eyes meeting hers. "I know someone who's scared and in trouble when I see them. Go on, get changed. I'll make some coffee." Upstairs, Catherine found the room Adam had mentioned. It was simply furnished with a bed, washstand, and wooden trunk. Opening the trunk, she found several dresses that, while not in the latest fashion, were clean and well made. She selected a simple blue calico dress and quickly changed, grateful to be out of her wet clothing. When she returned downstairs, Adam was placing 2 steaming mugs on a small table near the fire. He had removed his hat and wet vest, revealing thick brown hair that curled slightly at the nape of his neck. "Feel better?" he asked, gesturing for her to sit. Catherine nodded, taking the offered chair. "Thank you," she said softly, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. "I don't know what would have happened if—" "No need to dwell on that," Adam interrupted gently. "You're here now." Outside, the rain had intensified, drumming against the roof and windows. Catherine tensed as she heard a distant shout, barely audible over the storm. Adam noticed her reaction. "Don't worry, no one will find you here tonight, and tomorrow—" He paused, considering his words carefully. "Well, tomorrow we'll figure things out. For now, just rest. Stay until you're ready to talk." Those simple words spoken with such quiet assurance broke something inside Catherine. The tears she had been holding back spilled over, and she covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Adam didn't move to comfort her physically, seeming to understand instinctively that she needed space. Instead, he simply sat across from her, a steady, reassuring presence as the storm raged outside and her own internal storm found release. When her tears finally subsided, Catherine wiped her eyes and took a deep, shuddering breath. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "It's been a very long day." "No need to apologize," Adam replied. "And no need to explain anything tonight. There's food if you're hungry and a bed upstairs where you can rest." Catherine nodded gratefully, too exhausted to argue. After a simple meal of bread, cheese, and cold meat, Adam showed her to a small bedroom, not the one where she had changed, but another with a narrow bed and clean linens. "I'll be downstairs if you need anything," he said, pausing at the doorway. "Sleep well, Miss Winters," she supplied. "Katherine Winters, Miss Winters," he acknowledged with a slight nod. "You're safe here. Remember that." As he closed the door, Catherine sank onto the bed, her mind whirling with the day's events. She had fled her home in Cheyenne that morning, taking only what she could carry and the money her father had left her. Jacob had discovered her plan to leave and had pursued her, his threats still ringing in her ears. But now, in this stranger's home, with the rain pattering against the window and the knowledge that Adam Mitchell was standing guard downstairs, Catherine felt the tight knot of fear in her chest begin to loosen. For the first time in months, she slept without fear of what the morning might bring. Catherine woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of coffee and bacon. For a moment, she was disoriented, the unfamiliar room confusing her sleep-addled mind. Then the events of the previous day came rushing back, and she sat up quickly, her heart racing. A quick glance around the room revealed her borrowed dress hanging over a chair, now dry and neatly pressed. Her own clothes were nowhere to be seen. After washing her face in the basin provided, Catherine dressed and attempted to tame her long auburn hair, twisting it into a simple knot at the nape of her neck. Downstairs, she found Adam at the stove, his back to her as he tended to a pan of sizzling bacon. He turned at the sound of her footsteps, offering a small smile. "Good morning," he said. "Thought you might be hungry." "Thank you," Catherine replied, suddenly self-conscious. In the clear light of day, she could see Adam more clearly, the strong lines of his face, the slight crinkles at the corners of his eyes that suggested he smiled often, the quiet confidence in his bearing. He was handsome in a rugged, understated way that city men rarely achieved. Sit, he invited, gesturing to the table where two plates were already set. Coffee's hot. Katherine took the offered seat, watching as Adam served bacon and eggs onto their plates. I don't know how to thank you for your kindness, she began. Adam shook his head as he sat across from her. No need, anyone would have done the same. No, Katherine said firmly, not anyone. Most would have turned me away or worse, handed me over to Jacob. Adam studied her for a moment, his blue eyes thoughtful. This Jacob, he's your stepbrother, Katherine nodded, pushing her eggs around her plate. My father remarried when I was 12 after my mother died. Jacob is my stepmother's son from her first marriage. He's always resented my father and me. And now he's after money that's rightfully yours. Yes, Katherine took a deep breath. My father was a successful merchant in Cheyenne. When he died 3 months ago, he left the bulk of his estate to me. Jacob and his mother received a generous portion, but it wasn't enough for them. They've been trying to force me to sign over my inheritance. Force you how? Adam's voice had hardened. Katherine looked down at her plate. At first it was just threats. Then Jacob began to hurt me. Small things at first, a push here, a slap there, but it was getting worse. 2 days ago he came home drunk and said he was tired of waiting. He had a gun. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I locked myself in my room that night and made plans to leave. Yesterday morning I withdrew my money from the bank and bought a ticket on the afternoon stage to Denver. But Jacob found out somehow. He caught up with me just outside of town. Adam's hands had clenched into fists on the table. And he shot at you. Yes, I ran. I didn't know where I was going, just away from him. Then I saw your cornfield. And here we are, Adam finished for her. He was quiet for a moment, then asked, What will you do now? Katherine shook her head. I don't know, continue to Denver, I suppose. I have an aunt there who might take me in, but Jacob knows that's where I was headed. He might look for me there. Adam nodded thoughtfully. You could stay here for a while, he suggested. At least until things calm down. My farm is quite a ways from town and not many people come out this way. Katherine stared at him in surprise. I couldn't impose on you like that. It's not an imposition. The house is too big for just me, and to be honest, I could use some help around the place. He glanced around the kitchen. As you can probably tell, housekeeping isn't my strong suit. Katherine followed his gaze, noticing for the first time the layer of dust on the shelves, the cobwebs in the corners, the general air of neglect that permeated the otherwise solid home. Since my sister left, things have gotten a bit disorganized, Adam admitted with a rueful smile. I can offer you room and board in exchange for helping to get the house back in order, just until you decide what you want to do next. Katherine considered his offer. She had nowhere else to go, little money to her name despite her inheritance, most of which was tied up in property and investments, and a dangerous man looking for her. Staying with Adam at least for a short while seemed like her safest option. All right, she agreed finally. But only for a few days until I can make other arrangements. Adam nodded, seemingly satisfied. Good, now finish your breakfast, then I'll show you around the place. After breakfast, Adam gave Katherine a tour of the farmhouse and the surrounding property. The house was larger than it had appeared from outside, with 4 bedrooms upstairs, a spacious kitchen and sitting room downstairs, and a small study filled with books. This was my parents' place, Adam explained as they walked through the rooms. They came out here from Pennsylvania in '52, not long after I was born, built this house themselves. Pa died 5 years ago, Ma followed him 2 years later. I'm sorry, Katherine said softly, recognizing the grief that still lingered in his voice. Adam shrugged. That's life out here. Nothing's guaranteed. He led her back downstairs and out onto the wide porch that wrapped around the front of the house. The corn you found yourself in last night is my main crop, but I also grow wheat on the north field. Got some chickens out back, a milk cow, and a few head of cattle grazing on the far pasture. It's a beautiful place, Katherine observed, taking in the rolling fields stretching out before them, golden in the morning sun. It is, Adam agreed, a note of pride in his voice. Not the biggest spread in Wyoming, but it's mine, free and clear. As they stood there, a cloud of dust appeared on the distant road, signaling an approaching rider. Katherine tensed, instinctively stepping back toward the doorway. Adam moved slightly in front of her, his posture alert but not alarmed. Stay calm, he murmured. Could be anyone. As the rider drew closer, Katherine could see it was a young man in a sheriff's uniform. Her heart sank. Had Jacob already reported her as a thief, a runaway? Was this lawman here to arrest her? Adam seemed to sense her panic. "It's just Sheriff Daniels," he said quietly. "A good man, let me do the talking." The sheriff reined in his horse at the edge of the yard and touched the brim of his hat in greeting. "Morning, Mitchell." "Sheriff," Adam acknowledged with a nod. "What brings you out my way?" "Looking for someone," the sheriff replied, his eyes shifting to Katherine with open curiosity. "A young woman might have come through here yesterday." Katherine felt her blood run cold, but Adam's calm voice steadied her. "As you can see, I've got company," he said easily. "This is my cousin, Katherine, arrived from back east yesterday to help out around the place for a spell." The lie rolled off his tongue so smoothly that Katherine almost believed it herself. She managed a small, nervous smile, hoping the sheriff wouldn't notice the fear in her eyes. Sheriff Daniels studied her for a moment, then turned back to Adam. "Not who I'm looking for, then. Man in town says his sister-in-law stole a considerable sum of money and ran off. Described her as dark-haired, not auburn like your cousin here." Relief washed over Katherine. Jacob had lied about her appearance, perhaps hoping to keep other men from helping her if they recognized her true description. "Haven't seen anyone matching that description," Adam said truthfully. "This property's pretty isolated. If someone came through, I'd have noticed," the sheriff nodded. "Well, if you do see anything suspicious, let me know. This woman might be in danger." Her brother-in-law seemed mighty concerned. "I'll keep an eye out," Adam promised. With a final tip of his hat, the sheriff turned his horse and rode back toward town. Katherine waited until he was well out of earshot before releasing the breath she'd been holding. "He believed you," she said, amazed. Adam shrugged. "Sheriff Daniels doesn't know my family history. And he has no reason to doubt me. I've always been honest with him before." A flicker of guilt crossed his face. "Though I don't much like lying to the law." "I'm sorry," Katherine said softly. "I never meant to put you in this position." Adam's expression softened. "You didn't put me anywhere I didn't choose to be." He glanced in the direction the sheriff had disappeared. "But this confirms what you said about your stepbrother. He's looking for you and he's spinning lies to get the law on his side." "What should I do?" "For now, exactly what I told the sheriff. You're my cousin from back east, here to help around the farm. If anyone asks, your name is Katherine Mitchell. We'll keep you out of sight as much as possible, at least until we figure out our next move." "Our next move?" Katherine echoed, struck by his use of we. Adam gave her a small smile. "I don't make a habit of abandoning people who need help, Miss Winters. Now, how about we start getting this house in order? Might as well make my lie about you helping out the truth." Over the next few days, Katherine threw herself into cleaning and organizing the farmhouse. It was honest work, far different from the life she had known in Cheyenne as the daughter of a wealthy merchant, but she found satisfaction in seeing the rooms transform under her care. Adam spent most of his days in the fields, returning to the house at midday and again in the evening, his face sun-browned and his shirt damp with sweat. Despite her initial reservations about staying in a stranger's home, Katherine found herself growing comfortable in Adam's presence. He was unfailingly respectful, never pressing her for more information than she was ready to give, and always maintaining a careful distance that put her at ease. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire, Adam often reading from one of the many books in his study while Katherine mended clothing or worked on other small domestic tasks. Sometimes they talked about books, about farming, about the changing seasons. Adam told her stories of growing up on the frontier, of his parents' journey west, of his sister Abigail who had married a businessman and moved to San Francisco. Katherine, in turn, shared carefully edited stories of her own childhood, her mother's love of music, her father's patient teaching, the small joys of her life before her mother's death and her father's remarriage had changed everything. She avoided talking about Jacob and her stepmother, and Adam never pushed. A week passed, then two. The fear that had been Katherine's constant companion began to recede, replaced by a growing sense of security and, unexpectedly, contentment. She found herself watching Adam when he wasn't looking, noting the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the careful gentleness of his hands despite their strength, the quiet intelligence behind his simple manner. One evening, as they sat in companionable silence by the fire, Adam looked up from his book to find Katherine watching him. Instead of looking away, she held his gaze, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "What is it?" he asked, marking his place in the book with his finger. "I was just thinking," she said softly. "When I ran into your cornfield that night, I was certain my life was over, but now—" She gestured around the warm, clean room at the peaceful scene they made together. "Now I'm not so sure." Adam's expression softened. "Life has a way of surprising us." "Yes," Katherine agreed. "It does." The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken words and new possibilities. Then Adam cleared his throat and returned to his book, though Katherine noticed he turned several pages before he seemed to actually resume reading. The next morning dawned bright and clear, the October air crisp with the promise of winter to come. Katherine rose early, as had become her habit, and was preparing breakfast when Adam came in from his morning chores, bringing with him the fresh scent of hay and open air. "Town day," he announced, hanging his hat on the peg by the door. "Need to pick up supplies, thought you might want to come along." Katherine paused in her work, surprised by the invitation. "Is that wise? What if someone recognizes me? It's been nearly 3 weeks," Adam reasoned. "And Clearwater is 30 miles from Cheyenne. Not likely your stepbrother would look for you in a small town like ours." Katherine bit her lip, considering. She had been confined to the farm since her arrival, and the thought of a change of scenery was tempting. "All right," she decided. "I'll come." After breakfast, Katherine changed into one of Abigail's dresses, a simple brown calico that was modest enough for a small town, and arranged her hair carefully beneath a bonnet that would partially shield her face. Adam hitched his team to the wagon, and they set off down the dusty road toward Clearwater. As they traveled, Katherine found herself relaxing, enjoying the feel of the autumn sun on her face and the sight of the rolling Wyoming landscape spread out around them. Adam pointed out landmarks as they went: a distinctive rock formation, an abandoned homestead, the distant mountains that marked the horizon. "You love this land," Katherine observed. Adam nodded, his eyes scanning the familiar terrain. "It's in my blood now, can't imagine living anywhere else." Clearwater proved to be exactly what Adam had described: a small but bustling town with a main street lined with the essential businesses. General store, blacksmith, saloon, small hotel, and church. As they drove down the street, several people called out greetings to Adam, eyeing Katherine with undisguised curiosity. "Remember, you're my cousin from back east," Adam murmured as he helped her down from the wagon in front of the general store. "I remember," Katherine assured him, keeping her head slightly lowered as they entered the store. The proprietor, a portly man with mutton chop whiskers, greeted Adam warmly. "Mitchell, haven't seen you in nearly a month. Beginning to think you'd decided to become a hermit for good." Adam chuckled. "Just busy with the harvest, Mr. Perkins. This is my cousin Katherine. She's staying with me for a while, helping out around the place." Mr. Perkins turned his attention to Katherine, his eyes twinkling with interest. "A pleasure, Miss Mitchell. We don't get many new faces in Clearwater, especially not ones as pretty as yours." Katherine felt herself blush. "Thank you, Mr. Perkins. It's nice to meet you." While Adam handled the business of ordering supplies, Katherine wandered the store, examining the goods on display. It was smaller than the shops she was used to in Cheyenne, but well stocked with everything a frontier town might need. As she browsed, she became aware of a conversation taking place near the door. "Looking for his sister-in-law," a woman's voice was saying. "Poor thing apparently had some kind of breakdown after her father died. Ran off with the family money." Katherine froze, her hand hovering over a display of ribbons. "That's so," another voice responded. "What's she look like? Dark hair, they say, pretty but disturbed in the mind." "Husband's offering a reward for information leading to her safe return." Katherine's heart began to pound. Jacob was expanding his search, spreading lies about her mental state to explain her disappearance. And now he was claiming to be her husband, not her stepbrother, a far more sympathetic story to gain people's cooperation. She felt a hand on her elbow and nearly jumped out of her skin before realizing it was Adam, his expression concerned. "Ready to go?" he asked quietly. Katherine nodded, unable to trust her voice. Adam guided her past the gossiping women and out to the wagon, his hand steady at her back. Only when they were safely on the road out of town did Katherine release the breath she'd been holding. "He's saying I'm his wife," she whispered, her hands trembling in her lap, And that I'm mad. Adam's jaw tightened. I heard he's getting desperate. What if someone believes him? What if they come looking at your farm? Let them come, Adam said firmly. You're my cousin Katherine Mitchell, as far as anyone around here knows, and I've got enough respect in these parts that folks will take my word over a stranger's. They rode in silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Katherine spoke. I should leave, she said softly. I'm putting you at risk by staying. Adam glanced at her sharply. And go where? I don't know. Further west, perhaps, California, like your sister. Alone, with a man hunting you and spreading lies that you're a thief and a madwoman. Adam shook his head. That's not happening, Katherine. I can't stay with you forever, she insisted. Why not? The simple question caught her off guard. Because it's not proper, because this isn't my home. Because eventually, Jacob will find me, and when he does, he'll have to deal with me, Adam interrupted, his voice hard. And I'm not an easy man to deal with when I'm protecting something I care about. The words hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning neither was quite ready to acknowledge. Katherine looked away, her cheeks flushing. Besides, Adam continued in a lighter tone, you've only been here 3 weeks. The house is just starting to look decent again. You can't leave before you finish what you started. Despite her fear, Katherine found herself smiling. Is that all I am to you? Free household help? Adam's eyes met hers, suddenly serious. You know that's not true. The rest of the journey passed in a strangely charged silence, both of them aware that something had shifted between them, though neither was ready to name it. That night, after a quiet supper, Adam surprised Katherine by pulling out a fiddle from a case hidden away in his study. You play? She asked, delighted. Not as well as I'd like, he admitted, tuning the instrument with practiced fingers, but well enough to pass a winter evening. My pa taught me. He began to play a simple, haunting melody that filled the small sitting room with warmth. Katherine watched, entranced, as his strong hands coaxed music from the strings, his face softening with concentration and pleasure. When the song ended, she applauded softly. That was beautiful. What was it? Just an old tune my pa used to play, Adam said, setting the fiddle aside. He said his grandfather brought it over from Scotland. Will you play another? Katherine asked. Adam smiled, pleased by her interest. Only if you'll dance. Katherine laughed, surprised by the request. Dance here? Why not? Adam stood, moving the small table aside to create a space in the center of the room. Unless you don't know how. I know how, Katherine retorted, rising to the challenge. My father insisted I learn all the proper dances for society functions. Well, this won't be like any society function, Adam warned with a grin, picking up his fiddle again. But the principle's the same, follow the music. He began to play a lively reel, tapping his foot to keep time. After a moment's hesitation, Katherine gathered her skirts and stepped into the cleared space, letting the music guide her movements. At first, she felt self-conscious, but as the melody quickened, she found herself laughing, twirling in time with the fiddle's urgent voice. Adam watched her as he played, his eyes bright with admiration. When the song ended, he immediately began another, and Katherine continued to dance, her cheeks flushed with exertion and happiness. Finally, Adam set the fiddle aside and held out his hand. May I have this dance, Miss Winters? Katherine hesitated only briefly before placing her hand in his. There's no music, Mr. Mitchell. We'll make our own, he replied, drawing her into his arms. They moved together in the firelit room, finding a rhythm that required no external music. Katherine was acutely aware of Adam's hand at her waist, the solid strength of his shoulder beneath her palm, the scent of soap and outdoor air that clung to him. This is improper, she murmured, though she made no move to pull away. Probably, Adam agreed, his voice low near her ear. Does that bother you? Katherine considered the question seriously. 3 weeks ago, the very thought of being so familiar with a man she barely knew would have scandalized her. But now, after living under Adam's roof, seeing his kindness, his integrity, his quiet strength now, it felt the most natural thing in the world to be in his arms. No, she answered honestly. It doesn't bother me at all. Adam's steps slowed, and they came to a stop in the middle of the room, still holding each other. His eyes searched hers, asking a silent question. In answer, Katherine lifted her face to his. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, a question rather than a demand. When Katherine didn't pull away, Adam's arms tightened around her, drawing her closer as the kiss deepened. Katherine had been kissed before chaste, proper kisses from approved suitors under her father's watchful eye. Nothing had prepared her for this, the rush of heat that flooded her body, the way her heart seemed to expand in her chest, the feeling that some essential part of her had finally found its home. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing heavily. Adam rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed as if savoring the moment. "I've been wanting to do that since I found you in my cornfield," he admitted softly. Katherine laughed, a breathless sound of wonder and joy. "Even when I was covered in mud and terrified out of my wits." "Even then," Adam confirmed, brushing a strand of hair from her face with gentle fingers. "You were the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen." He kissed her again, and Katherine surrendered to the feeling, allowing herself to forget, if only for a moment, the dangers that still pursued her. Later, as they sat side by side before the dying fire, Adam's arm around her shoulders and her head resting against him, Katherine broke the comfortable silence. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. Adam's fingers traced idle patterns on her shoulder. "What do you want to happen?" Katherine sighed. "In a perfect world, I'd stay here with you. I'd never have to worry about Jacob finding me. We'd have time to see where this leads. And in the real world, I'm still afraid," she admitted. "Jacob won't stop looking for me or for the money. And I don't want to bring trouble to your door." Adam was quiet for a moment, considering. "What if we faced him together?" Katherine sat up, looking at him in alarm. "What do you mean? What if instead of running and hiding, we dealt with the problem directly?" "You said your inheritance is legally yours, correct?" "Yes, of course. My father's will was very clear." "Then we go to the authorities in Cheyenne with the truth. We expose Jacob's lies and clear your name." Katherine shook her head. "It's not that simple. Jacob has friends in Cheyenne, influential friends, and it would be his word against mine." "Not just yours," Adam corrected. "Mine too, and I'm betting if we look hard enough, we'll find others who have seen how Jacob treated you who might be willing to speak up." "Perhaps," Katherine conceded. "But it's dangerous. Jacob has already tried to kill me once, which is why we won't go in unprepared." Adam took her hands in his. "Katherine, I care for you deeply. I want you to stay, not just for a few weeks or months, but permanently." Katherine's heart skipped a beat. "Adam." "I know it's fast," he continued quickly. "I know we've only known each other a short time, but I also know what I feel when I'm with you, and I hope you might feel the same." "I do," Katherine whispered, tears pricking at her eyes. "But no buts," Adam interrupted gently. "If we're going to have a future together, we need to deal with your past. I won't have you looking over your shoulder for the rest of your life, afraid that Jacob might find you." Katherine studied his face, seeing the determination there, the unwavering resolve. "You'd really do this for me?" "Risk everything for us," Adam corrected. "And yes," without hesitation, Katherine took a deep breath, drawing strength from his confidence. "All right," she agreed. "We'll try it your way, but we need a plan, a good one. Jacob is dangerous and he's cunning." "Then we'll be more cunning," Adam promised. "Starting tomorrow, we'll work out exactly how to clear your name and ensure Jacob can never threaten you again." With that decided, they spent another hour by the fire, talking of more pleasant things, their hopes, their dreams, the future they might build together once this shadow was lifted from Katherine's life. When the fire had burned down to embers, Adam walked Katherine to the foot of the stairs, kissing her once more before bidding her good night. In her room, Katherine sat on the edge of the bed, her fingers touching her lips where Adam's kiss still lingered. For the first time since her father's death, she felt hope not just for survival, but for happiness. With Adam beside her, perhaps she could indeed face Jacob and reclaim her life. With that thought warming her heart, she slept more peacefully than she had in months. The next morning, Adam and Katherine sat at the kitchen table, planning their approach to dealing with Jacob. Adam had brought out paper and pencil, making notes as they talked. "First things first," he said. "We need evidence of Jacob's true character and behavior." Katherine nodded. "There was a housekeeper, Mrs. Collins, who witnessed some of his cruelty. And my father's lawyer, Mr. Harrington, might help. He never liked Jacob or my stepmother." "Good." Adam jotted down the names. "Anyone else? Dr. Wells treated me once when Jacob pushed me down the stairs. I told him I had fallen, but I don't think he believed me." Adam's jaw tightened at this new information about Jacob's abuse, but he simply added the doctor's name to his list. "What about the money? You said you withdrew it from the bank before leaving. Yes, most of what was immediately available. The rest is tied up in investments and property. I have the bank draft here. Katherine went to her bag and removed a carefully folded document. This proves I withdrew the money legally with the banker's approval. Adam examined the paper. This helps, shows you didn't steal anything. He looked up at her. Where is the money now? Katherine hesitated. Hidden in the lining of my traveling bag. It's not as much as Jacob makes it out to be enough to start a new life somewhere, that's all. And the rest of your inheritance can only be accessed with proper legal documents. My father was cautious that way. Adam nodded thoughtfully. So Jacob needs you to sign over your rights. That's why he's so desperate to find you. Yes, without my signature, he can't touch the bulk of the estate. Then that's our leverage, Adam decided. We need to get to Cheyenne and speak with your father's lawyer before confronting Jacob directly. They spent the rest of the morning refining their plan. They would travel to Cheyenne in 2 days' time, first meeting with Mr. Harrington to ensure Katherine's legal position was secure. Then they would gather statements from Mrs. Collins and Dr. Wells, if possible, before taking their evidence to the territorial marshal, bypassing the local sheriff whom Jacob might have influenced. What if it doesn't work? Katherine asked, voicing her deepest fear. What if Jacob convinces them I'm lying? Adam reached across the table, taking her hand in his. Then we have a backup plan. We leave together. Head west to California or north to Montana territory. Start fresh somewhere Jacob can't find us. Katherine squeezed his hand, overwhelmed by his commitment to her. I don't deserve you, Adam Mitchell. You deserve far better, he replied seriously. But I'm what you've got, and I promise I won't let you face this alone. That evening, as they sat together on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Adam surprised Katherine by taking her hand and slipping to one knee before her. I know it's sudden, he said, his voice uncharacteristically nervous. And I know we have obstacles to overcome. But I can't imagine my life without you in it now, Katherine Winters. When all this is settled, when you're free of Jacob and his threats, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Katherine stared at him, speechless with surprise and joy. Despite their growing closeness, despite the kisses they had shared and the future they had begun to imagine together, she hadn't expected a formal proposal, not yet. Adam, she finally managed, her voice thick with emotion, are you certain? You barely know me. I know everything I need to know, he replied steadily. I know you're brave and kind. I know you work hard and don't complain. I know you laugh at my terrible jokes and dance like you were born to it. I know the sound of your voice makes my day brighter, and the thought of you leaving makes my heart ache. He paused, his blue eyes holding hers. I know I love you, Katherine. The rest we can figure out together. Tears spilled down Katherine's cheeks as she slid from her chair to kneel before him, their hands still clasped together. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you, Adam Mitchell. His smile was like the sunrise, bright and full of promise, as he gathered her into his arms, sealing their engagement with a kiss that spoke of devotion and hope, and a future neither had dared imagine just weeks before. The next day passed in a flurry of preparations for their journey to Cheyenne. Adam made arrangements with a neighboring farmer to look after his livestock during their absence, while Katherine packed their necessities and prepared food for the trip. They planned to leave at first light, hoping to reach Cheyenne by nightfall the following day. That evening, as they sat together reviewing their plans one final time, a sound from outside caught Adam's attention, the distant rumble of approaching horses. Are you expecting anyone? Katherine asked, her body instantly tense. Adam shook his head, rising to his feet and moving to the window. No, and that's more than one rider. He crossed quickly to the gun rack on the wall, removing his rifle and checking that it was loaded. Stay here, he instructed Katherine, his voice calm but firm. If there's trouble, there's a trapdoor under the rug in my bedroom. It leads to a root cellar with an exit behind the barn. My father built it during the Indian troubles years ago. Katherine nodded, her throat dry with fear. Be careful, she whispered. Adam gave her a reassuring smile before stepping out onto the porch, rifle held casually but ready in his hands. Through the window, Katherine could see him standing tall and steady, waiting as 3 riders approached the house. As they drew closer, Adam's posture suddenly changed, relaxing slightly, though not completely. Katherine strained to hear the conversation taking place outside. Mitchell. A voice called, "Fine evening, isn't it, Sheriff Daniels?" Adam replied, his voice carrying clearly. "What brings you out here at this hour?" The sheriff dismounted, followed by his two companions. "Got some questions for you, I'm afraid, about your cousin." Catherine's heart sank. Something had gone wrong. Their plan was unraveling before it had even begun. Outside, Adam maintained his calm demeanor. "What about her?" "Got a report she might not be who she claims to be," the sheriff said. "Man came into town today asking questions. Described a woman matches your cousin's description pretty closely. Says she's his wife, ran off with family money after her father died." "Is that so?" Adam's voice betrayed nothing. "And you believed this stranger over me, Sheriff?" "Didn't say I believed anything," Sheriff Daniels replied. "Just doing my job, asking questions. Where is the lady, by the way?" "Inside," Adam said. "Resting, been feeling poorly today." "Mind if I speak with her?" There was a pause, and Katherine could imagine Adam weighing his options. Finally, he said, "Not at all. But I'll warn you, Sheriff, my cousin doesn't take kindly to being disturbed when she's unwell." The door opened, and Adam entered, followed by Sheriff Daniels and a deputy. The third man remained outside with the horses. "Katherine," Adam said calmly, "Sheriff Daniels would like to speak with you." Katherine rose from her chair, forcing her trembling legs to support her. She had known this moment might come, had prepared for it, but facing it now, she felt fear threatening to overwhelm her. "Of course," she said, adopting the slight Eastern accent she and Adam had practiced. "How may I help you, Sheriff?" Sheriff Daniels removed his hat, studying her carefully. "Madam, sorry to disturb your evening. I'm following up on a report about a missing woman. Her husband's mighty concerned about her." "How terrible," Katherine responded, managing to keep her voice steady. "I do hope you find her. Thing is," the sheriff continued, "the description matches you pretty closely. Dark-haired woman, about your age and build, traveling alone." Katherine laughed lightly. "Well, that could describe half the women in the territory, couldn't it? Besides, as you can see, I'm not traveling alone. I've been staying with my cousin." "So you are Katherine Mitchell from back east?" "That's right," she confirmed. "Pennsylvania originally, though I've been living in St. Louis these past few years." The sheriff nodded slowly. "The man looking for his wife says she might use a false name, says she's not well in the mind." Katherine felt a flash of genuine anger at Jacob's persistent lies. "How convenient for him," she said, unable to keep a touch of bitterness from her voice. "A woman runs from a man and he claims she's mad. It's an old story, isn't it, Sheriff?" Something shifted in the sheriff's expression, a flicker of doubt, perhaps even sympathy. "Yes, madam, I suppose it is." Adam stepped forward. "Sheriff, my cousin has been here for nearly a month. In that time, has she done anything to suggest she's not exactly who she claims to be? Has she caused any trouble in town, acted in any way that would indicate she's not well in the mind as this stranger suggests?" "No," Sheriff Daniels admitted. "She hasn't." "Then I'd appreciate it if you'd leave her be," Adam said firmly. "She came here for rest and quiet, not to be harassed based on the word of some man none of us has ever met." The sheriff hesitated, glancing between Adam and Katherine. Finally, he replaced his hat. "All right, Mitchell. No offense meant, just doing my job." "I understand," Adam said, his tone softening slightly. "And I appreciate you coming out here rather than bringing this stranger to my door." Sheriff Daniels nodded. "He's staying at the hotel in town, said his name is Jacob Winters. Seemed respectable enough, but..." He shrugged. "Something about him didn't sit right with me. That's why I wanted to hear your side first." Katherine felt a chill at the confirmation that Jacob had indeed tracked her to Clearwater. He was close, too close. "Thank you for that consideration," Adam said sincerely. "I'd be obliged if you didn't mention to this Mr. Winters that my cousin is staying here, given what you've just said about him not sitting right with you." The sheriff considered this request, then nodded slowly. "I'll tell him I checked out a report of a woman matching the description, but it wasn't his wife. That's the truth as far as I'm concerned." He turned to Katherine. "Sorry to have troubled you, Miss Mitchell." "It's no trouble, Sheriff," Katherine replied. "I understand you're just doing your duty." After the sheriff and his men had departed, Katherine collapsed into a chair, her legs finally giving way beneath her. "He's here," she whispered. "Jacob is here in Clearwater." Adam knelt before her, taking her hands in his. But he doesn't know for certain that you're here, and the sheriff is on our side, or at least he's not on Jacob's." "It changes everything," Katherine said. "We can't go to Cheyenne now. Jacob will be watching the roads." Adam nodded, his expression grim. "You're right, we need a new plan." He thought for a moment, then said, "What if we bring the law to us instead of going to them?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if we send for the territorial marshal, explain the situation in a letter, ask him to come to Clearwater to investigate Jacob's claims?" Katherine considered this. "It could work, but how do we get the letter to Cheyenne without Jacob intercepting it?" "I have a friend, Tom Bradshaw. He rides for the stage company. I trust him with my life. He could take our message directly to the marshal's office." Hope flickered in Katherine's heart. "Do you think the marshal would come? For something like this, if we explain that a man is falsely accusing his stepsister of theft and madness in order to steal her inheritance, I think he might be interested. Especially if we mention that the local sheriff has concerns about this man's character." They spent the next hour composing a careful letter to the territorial marshal detailing Katherine's situation, Jacob's pursuit, and their evidence that could prove her claims. Adam sealed it with wax and put it aside to deliver to Tom Bradshaw the next day. "Now what?" Katherine asked when they had finished. "Now we wait," Adam replied, "and we stay alert. Jacob doesn't know for certain you're here, but he suspects. We need to be prepared if he decides to come looking himself." That night, despite Adam's reassurances, Katherine found sleep elusive. She lay awake, listening to every creak of the old farmhouse, every rustle of wind through the cornfield, imagining Jacob's approach in each sound. Finally, unable to bear the solitude any longer, she wrapped a shawl around her nightdress and crept downstairs. She found Adam sitting at the kitchen table, cleaning his rifle by the light of a single lamp. He looked up as she entered, not surprised to see her. "Couldn't sleep." Katherine shook her head. "Every sound seems to be him coming for me." Adam set the rifle aside and held out his hand to her. When she took it, he pulled her gently into his lap, wrapping his arms around her. "I won't let him hurt you," he murmured against her hair. "I promise you that." Katherine leaned against him, drawing comfort from his solid presence. "I know, it's just, he's so close now, after all these weeks of feeling safe, to know he's just a few miles away." "We'll get through this," Adam assured her. "By this time next week, you'll be free of him for good." Katherine lifted her head to look into his eyes. "How can you be so certain?" "Because I have to be," he answered simply. "Because the alternative is unthinkable." She kissed him then, pouring all her fear and hope and love into the gesture. Adam responded in kind, his arms tightening around her as if he could shield her from the world through sheer force of will. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Adam rested his forehead against hers. "You should go back upstairs," he said reluctantly. "If we're to maintain any semblance of propriety." Katherine nodded, though she made no move to leave his embrace. "Soon we won't have to worry about propriety," she whispered. "Soon I'll be your wife." Adam smiled, his eyes warm with promise. "Soon," he agreed. "Now go, before I forget all my good intentions." Katherine reluctantly returned to her room, but this time sleep came more easily, wrapped in the certainty of Adam's protection and love. The next morning, Adam left early to find Tom Bradshaw and entrust him with their letter to the marshal. Katherine remained at the farm, doors locked and Adam's spare pistol close at hand, as they had agreed. The hours stretched endlessly as she waited for his return. To distract herself, she began baking bread first, then apple pies with fruit from the small orchard behind the house. The familiar task soothed her nerves, giving her hands something to do besides tremble with fear. It was mid-afternoon when she heard hoofbeats approaching. Wiping flour from her hands, she moved cautiously to the window, peering out to see who was coming. Relief washed over her as she recognized Adam's tall figure on horseback. She opened the door as he dismounted, her smile fading as she saw the grim set of his mouth. "What's wrong? Did you find Tom?" Adam nodded, leading his horse toward the stable. "I found him. He took our letter and promised to deliver it personally to the marshal, but there's other news." Katherine followed him into the stable, watching as he unsaddled his horse. "What news?" "Jacob was asking questions in town today, showing your picture around." Adam's hands worked methodically at the buckles. "No one recognized you, or at least, no one admitted to it, but he's not giving up." "Did you see him?" Katherine asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "No, but I heard plenty about him." Seems he's made quite an impression flashing money around, buying drinks at the saloon, playing the part of the concerned husband searching for his troubled wife. Katherine felt sick. How long before someone connects me to the woman in his picture? Not long, Adam admitted. Which is why we need to be ready to move quickly if necessary. I've prepared the root cellar with supplies, food, water, blankets. If Jacob comes here, you hide there until it's safe. And leave you to face him alone. No, Adam. Adam turned to her, his expression softening as he took in her determined stance. Katherine, this man tried to kill you. He's dangerous. All the more reason we should face him together, she insisted. I won't hide while you put yourself at risk for me. Adam studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, together then, but promise me you'll be careful, no unnecessary risks. I promise, Katherine agreed. Now come inside, I've been baking all day and you must be hungry. As they walked back to the house, Adam's arm around her shoulders, Katherine felt a strange calm settle over her. The fear was still there, a constant presence in the back of her mind, but it was tempered now by resolve. With Adam beside her, she would face whatever came, even Jacob. That evening, as they sat together in the warm kitchen, the scent of fresh baked bread and apple pie filling the air, Katherine found herself studying Adam's face, memorizing the lines around his eyes. The way his mouth curved when he smiled, the steady, dependable strength that radiated from him. "What is it?" he asked, catching her gaze. "I was just thinking how different my life might have been if I hadn't run into your cornfield that night," she said softly. "If I had chosen a different direction when I fled from Jacob." Adam reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "I believe some things are meant to be, Katherine. Maybe you were always meant to find your way to me," she smiled, squeezing his fingers. "I'd like to think so." The peaceful moment was shattered by the sudden, sharp crack of a gunshot outside. Both Katherine and Adam froze, their eyes meeting in instant understanding. "He's here," Katherine whispered. Adam was on his feet in an instant, moving to the window to peer cautiously outside. Night had fallen, but the moon was bright, illuminating the yard and the edge of the cornfield beyond. "I don't see anyone," he said, reaching for his rifle, "but they're out there." Another shot rang out, this one striking the side of the house with a splintering of wood. Katherine flinched at the sound. "Upstairs," Adam directed her, his voice calm despite the danger. "My bedroom. Get under the bed and stay there until I come for you." Katherine hesitated, torn between her promise to face Jacob together and her fear of becoming a liability in a gunfight. "Adam, please, Katherine," he interrupted, his eyes pleading, "just until I know what we're dealing with." Reluctantly, she nodded and moved toward the stairs. Before she reached them, the front door burst open, revealing a figure silhouetted against the night sky, a man with a gun. "Hello, sister dear," Jacob's voice, slick with malice, filled the room. "Found you at last." Katherine froze, terror washing over her at the sight of her stepbrother. He looked thinner than when she had last seen him, his once handsome face now haggard with obsession, his eyes feverish in the lamplight. Adam raised his rifle, pointing it steadily at Jacob's chest. "Put the gun down and step back," he ordered. Jacob's gaze shifted to Adam, a sneer twisting his lips. "So this is where you've been hiding, with some dirt farmer in the middle of nowhere," he laughed, the sound brittle. "Always did have low standards, Katherine." "Put the gun down," Adam repeated, his voice hard. "You're trespassing on private property." "Am I?" Jacob's attention returned to Katherine. "I'm simply retrieving my wife who's been unwell. Isn't that right, dear? Time to come home now." "I'm not your wife," Katherine said, finding her voice at last. "And I'm never going back with you, Jacob. It's over." Jacob's expression darkened. "It's over when I say it's over. The money belongs to me, to my mother and me." "Your father had no right, my father had every right," Katherine interrupted, anger replacing fear as she faced the man who had terrorized her for months. "It was his money, his property, and he chose to leave it to me. A choice he made while you poisoned his mind against us," Jacob snarled. "You always were his favorite, his precious daughter who could do no wrong." "That's not true, and you know it," Katherine replied steadily. "My father was fair to you and your mother, more than fair. He gave you a home, an education, opportunities most men would be grateful for. But it was never enough for you, was it?" Jacob's hand tightened on his gun. "Enough talk. You're coming with me now, Katherine. We'll sort out the details later." "She's not going anywhere with you," Adam stated, stepping forward to place himself between Katherine and Jacob. The territorial marshal is already on his way. He knows everything about your lies, your threats, your attempt to steal Katherine's inheritance. Uncertainty flashed across Jacob's face, quickly replaced by rage. You're bluffing. Am I? Adam countered. Sheriff Daniels wasn't convinced by your story. He's been asking questions about you in town. Seems you've made quite a name for yourself, throwing money around, talking too much when you've had a few drinks. Jacob's eyes darted between them, calculating. It doesn't matter. By the time any marshal arrives, we'll be long gone, he gestured with his gun. Now step aside, farmer, this isn't your concern. I'm making it my concern, Adam replied. Katherine is under my protection now as my future wife. The words hung in the air for a moment before Jacob laughed a harsh, ugly sound. Wife, you think you're going to marry her, for the money, I suppose. Well, I hate to disappoint you, but there won't be any money without my signature. Father made sure of that. That's a lie, Katherine said, moving to stand beside Adam. The estate is mine, Jacob, all of it. My signature is the only one needed to access the funds, which is why you've been so desperate to find me. Jacob's face contorted with fury. He never finished the sentence. Outside, the sound of approaching riders broke the tension. Jacob glanced toward the window, momentarily distracted. It was all the opening Adam needed. He lunged forward, knocking Jacob's arm upward as the gun discharged, the bullet embedding itself harmlessly in the ceiling. The two men grappled for control of the weapon, their struggle fierce and desperate. Katherine watched in horror as they crashed into furniture, each fighting for dominance. Jacob was smaller than Adam, but fueled by rage and desperation. He managed to wrench free, the gun still in his hand, and aimed it directly at Adam's chest. Without thinking, Katherine grabbed the heavy iron skillet from the stove and swung it with all her might. It connected with the back of Jacob's head with a sickening thud. He crumpled to the floor, the gun falling from his limp fingers. Adam kicked the weapon away, then knelt to check Jacob's pulse. He's alive, he reported, just unconscious. Outside, voices called Adam's name. He moved to the door, opening it to reveal Sheriff Daniels and several deputies. Mitchell, the sheriff exclaimed, heard gunshots, everything all right. "'Tis now," Adam replied, gesturing to Jacob's prone form. "This is Jacob Winters. He broke into my home and threatened me and my cousin with a gun." Sheriff Daniels entered, taking in the scene with practiced eyes. "Your cousin, eh?" he said, his tone suggesting he'd pieced together more of the truth than he'd let on before. Adam met his gaze steadily. "The truth is, Sheriff, she's not my cousin. She's Katherine Winters, and this man is her stepbrother, not her husband. He's been pursuing her to force her to sign over her inheritance." The sheriff nodded slowly. "Figured there was more to the story." He turned to Katherine. "Madam, that the truth of it," Katherine stepped forward. "Yes, Sheriff, everything Adam has told you is true. Jacob has been violent with me in the past. When my father died and left me his estate, Jacob became desperate. He threatened to kill me if I didn't sign everything over to him. I fled Cheyenne with only what I could carry." "And you ended up here," the sheriff finished for her, "in Mitchell's cornfield." "Yes," Katherine confirmed. "Adam has protected me, given me shelter. We've sent for the territorial marshal to help resolve the legal matters." Sheriff Daniels considered this, then nodded decisively. "Well, regardless of the inheritance issues, breaking and entering and threatening folks with a gun is enough to land this fellow in my jail for now." He gestured to his deputies, who moved to secure the still unconscious Jacob. "We'll hold him until the marshal arrives. You two will need to come into town tomorrow to make formal statements." "We'll be there," Adam promised. After Jacob had been taken away and the sheriff and his men had departed, Katherine found herself trembling with delayed reaction. Adam immediately gathered her into his arms, holding her close as the tears finally came. "It's over," he murmured against her hair. "It's really over, Katherine. He can't hurt you anymore." "I know," she whispered between sobs. "I know, I just can't believe it." After all these months of living in fear, Adam led her to a chair, kneeling before her as she struggled to compose herself. "You were incredibly brave tonight," he told her, his eyes filled with admiration. "That was quite a swing with the skillet." Despite everything, Katherine found herself laughing through her tears. "My mother always said I had a good arm." Adam smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her damp cheek. Remind me never to make you angry. As if you could, she replied softly, placing her hand against his face. You saved me, Adam, in every way a person can be saved. He turned his head to press a kiss to her palm. We saved each other, I think. 3 days later, the territorial marshal arrived in Clearwater. After hearing Katherine's story, examining the documentation she provided, and interviewing Jacob, who had recovered from his head injury but not from his rage, the marshal determined that Katherine was indeed the rightful heir to her father's estate, and that Jacob had committed multiple crimes in his pursuit of her. He'll be transferred to Cheyenne to stand trial, the marshal informed Katherine and Adam as they sat in Sheriff Daniel's office. Given the evidence and his own admission of his actions while in custody, I expect he'll serve a significant prison sentence. And my stepmother? Katherine asked. No evidence she was directly involved in the threats against you, the marshal replied, but the investigation is ongoing. If we find she participated in or encouraged her son's actions, she'll face charges as well. Katherine nodded, relief washing over her. Thank you, Marshal, for believing me. The evidence speaks for itself, Miss Winters, he said kindly. Now I understand from Sheriff Daniels that you've been staying with Mr. Mitchell here. Yes, Katherine confirmed, her cheeks warming slightly. Adam has been very kind to me. The marshal's eyes twinkled with understanding. I see. Well, perhaps you'll be returning to Cheyenne now to claim your inheritance properly. Katherine glanced at Adam, who nodded encouragingly. Yes, I will need to return briefly, but my future lies here in Clearwater. She reached for Adam's hand. We're to be married. Congratulations, the marshal said sincerely. After everything you've been through, Miss Winters, I'm glad to see you found happiness. 2 weeks later, Katherine stood in the small church in Clearwater, wearing a simple white dress that Abigail Mitchell had worn at her own wedding years before. Adam waited for her at the altar, his expression one of such complete joy and love that it brought tears to Katherine's eyes. The journey to Cheyenne had been successful. Katherine had met with her father's lawyer, secured her inheritance, and set in motion the sale of her father's business and property. The proceeds would allow her and Adam to expand their farm, perhaps buy additional land, and ensure their future security. Jacob remained in custody, awaiting trial. Her stepmother, faced with her son's impending imprisonment and the loss of her comfortable lifestyle, had retreated to her sister's home in St. Louis, writing Katherine a brief but surprisingly sincere letter of apology before her departure. The past was finally settled. Only the future remained, a future bright with promise and love. As Katherine walked down the aisle toward Adam, she thought of that terrifying night when she had fled through his cornfield, desperate and alone. How strange that the darkest moment of her life had led her to the greatest happiness she had ever known. Adam took her hands in his as she reached him, his blue eyes bright with emotion. Ready, he whispered. Katherine smiled, her heart full to bursting. Ready, she replied. The minister began the ceremony, but Katherine barely heard the words. All she could see was Adam, her protector, her friend, her love. The man who had found her hiding in his cornfield and had simply said, "Stay until you're ready to talk." She had stayed. She had talked. And now she would never leave. 5 years later, Katherine stood on the porch of their expanded farmhouse, watching as Adam taught their 4-year-old son, James, how to ride his first pony. Their 2-year-old daughter, Elizabeth, clung to Katherine's skirts, her tiny face alight with excitement as she watched her big brother. Careful, Adam, Katherine called, unable to suppress the maternal worry that rose in her chest as James wobbled precariously in the small saddle. Adam looked up, flashing her the smile that still made her heart skip a beat after all these years. He's fine, aren't you, Jamie? I'm fine, Mama, James echoed confidently, though his knuckles were white where they gripped the saddle horn. Katherine shook her head, smiling despite her concern. In the 5 years since their wedding, Adam had proven to be not only a loving husband but an exceptional father, patient, kind, and just adventurous enough to make their children's lives exciting without causing their mother too much anxiety. Their farm had prospered, thanks in part to the investment of Katherine's inheritance. They had expanded their acreage, built a larger barn, and hired several hands to help with the increasing workload. Adam's innovative farming techniques had made their operation one of the most successful in the territory. and Catherine's careful management of their finances had ensured their continued growth. But their greatest treasures were their children James, with his father's blue eyes and determined spirit, and Elizabeth, who had inherited Catherine's auburn hair and quick mind. A third child was on the way, though Katherine had not yet shared the news with Adam. She was saving it for tonight, as a special gift on their anniversary. As she watched her family in the golden afternoon light, Katherine felt a wave of gratitude so intense it brought tears to her eyes. How far she had come from that terrified young woman running for her life through an unfamiliar cornfield. News had reached them last year that Jacob had died in prison, a victim of influenza that had swept through the facility. Katherine had felt no joy at the news, only a quiet relief that the last shadow from her past had finally been lifted. "Penny for your thoughts," Adam said, suddenly beside her on the porch. He had left James in the care of one of the farm hands and had come to join his wife. Elizabeth now transferred to her father's arms. Katherine smiled up at him. "I was just thinking how fortunate I am, how blessed." Adam's free arm slipped around her waist, drawing her close to his side. "We're the fortunate ones," he corrected softly. "You changed everything when you stumbled into my cornfield that night. You changed everything when you said those simple words," Katherine countered. "Stay until you're ready to talk." "I don't think you knew then how those words would alter both our lives." "Maybe I did," Adam said thoughtfully. "Maybe on some level I knew you were exactly what was missing from my life." Katherine leaned her head against his shoulder, contentment washing over her. "I love you, Adam Mitchell. More today than yesterday and less than tomorrow." Adam pressed a kiss to her temple. "And I love you, Katherine Mitchell, always have, always will." As the sun began its descent toward the distant mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Katherine thought of all the paths her life might have taken, all the choices that had led her to this moment. She had run into Adam's cornfield seeking escape, seeking safety. She had found so much more. She had found home,